Well, Planner's not here.
Y'all, we're so glad to have Judge Fenway with us, and he's ready to throw the case out because the plaintiffs are not here, but I plead the mercy of the court. So maybe we can inspire him with the Freedom Singers. Maybe they will touch his heart and give us a little more time. Freedom Singers! And for Jimmy Lee Jackson and those not only who died 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, but yesterday. Yesterday. And I want them to sing one of my favorite songs. Y'all know what it is.
We've been you and we've been born. We've been born the world should know. But we'll
I say. I don't know what's taking these people so long. We're still waiting for the Trinity judge. You might have to throw out the case for real.
He said they're on the way.
They're on the way.
From where?
While we're waiting for them, y'all still a shout out where it's about where everybody's from in the room. Just tell us where you're from.
New Orleans.
New Orleans.
Oklahoma City.
Oklahoma City.
Greenville, Mississippi.
Greenville, Mississippi.
Baltimore, Maryland.
Baltimore, Maryland.
Flint, Michigan.
Michigan.
Atlanta.
Atlanta.
Mobile.
Mobile.
Albany, Georgia.
Huntsville.
Albany, Georgia.
Albany, Georgia.
Gambia, West Africa.
The Gambia, West Africa.
Orangeburg, South Carolina.
Orangeburg, South Carolina.
Columbus, Ohio.
Columbus, Ohio.
Marion, Alabama.
Marion, Alabama.
Tuscaloosa, Alabama.
Tuscaloosa, Alabama.
Rockville, Kentucky.
Rockville, Kentucky.
Utah, Alabama.
Utah, Alabama.
Washington, D.C.
Washington, D.C.
Birmingham.
Birmingham. Mom, won't you tell us something about the bill and what's going on?
Okay, good to see everybody as always. And every year we try to improve and build upon technology so we can share this with everyone. We were able to stream out all over the country and the world. The Education Summit today is our goal to do the same thing with the mock trial and with the public conversation that will happen after. So that everybody who's not here can participate in this. And we have a couple of, well, several, about 3 crews here who are doing this work for us, and we're appreciative. Alex and his crew are handling audio tonight. Henry is handling the video and streaming of the mock trial, and Eric is handling the video and streaming of the public conversation. One of the things that in all of our busy lives, I think we all do this even outside of Selma, we have events and we don't always memorialize them and record them and document them. We do them somewhat with our phones, and some of you navigate, but in terms of having places and spaces where these archives can live and be cataloged is what we're seeking. I wish, as I know I speak for Mama Five Rose when I say, I wish we had a catalog of every video of every Jubilee, because a lot of historic things that happened here, even in this very courtroom, when we've had the mock trials over the years, we've had some very meaningful exchanges and some very meaningful public conversations. So that's what's going on, you see, with all the cameras. And hopefully, okay.
It's back on.
So I said all that empowerment out. But that's what we aim to do. And honestly, I think one of the projects we want to engage in at some point, this just comes to mind at the moment, is those of you who have visited Jubilee over the years have photos and recordings that you may want to share at some point. We can gather them, to share with, I'm looking at some of y'all I know have stuff that you can share with in archives. And that would be another attraction, quite frankly, for the museum, for people to actually be able to come and see some of what we have gathered and cataloged over the course of the year. So,
We want to send pictures.
but we'll set that up. We'll set that up. We want to make it a project. Obviously, just literally getting in mind right now. And so we'll solicit that and share that with be able to share with work, and that will build a museum. The public conversation tonight is going to be a little bit different. We always talk about issues in the macro, but tonight we're going to talk about issues in the micro, and that is about self. And what many of us say but don't always say out loud is that people come here, cross that bridge, and don't think about Selma again.
Right.
The slogan this year, don't just cross the bridge, be a bridge, is really relevant. Selma, having endured a tornado, and I'm not saying this to be disrespectful, it's just a fact. President Biden goes to Ukraine with $500 million in a suitcase. There should be some money for Selma for recovery. 1. 2, Selma should be a thriving economic metropolis of the South. Selma is not only the birthplace of democracy. There was no democracy in this country before Selma. Briefly during Reconstruction, and they took it away, ever so briefly. And still even then, women couldn't vote. So there was no democracy in America before Selma. And just, you know, for me, as a minister from a theological perspective, I've often said this, Selma is not only the birthplace of democracy, but it is the Calvary of America. Because the blood that was shed here saved America. It was for America's original sin. And it was a collective crucifixion because there was a number of people. Jesus was hung on the cross by himself and 2 criminals. Hundreds of people beaten, blood shed right out this door. Did y'all saw it on video, right? Did they show it on that on press? CT video. CT video, everybody else being beat up right outside that side door. That's where that happened. You know, being beaten in the face just for trying to come register to vote. So that's the suffering. So we can wear crosses, we can wear this bridge. It's the same thing. It's still a symbol of bloodshed and sacrifice for the sins of America and the lack of democracy. So the cradle of democracy, the cradle of civilization here in this country, Selma, it should be businesses just bustling and activity and lights and whatnot. And we need to figure that out before somebody else comes along who doesn't look like any of us.
That's right. Tell it.
And figures out a way to make this a tourist attraction and make money for themselves and drive us out. There's a reason the water didn't work in Jackson. There's a reason things are falling apart in Jackson, Mississippi. Because they want to force us out so that others can gentrify. That's the only big city in Mississippi. So they want to gentrify and get us out and bring other folk in there, and then it'll be all that. But we can't have that. So to me, this ought to be ground zero for economic development, employment opportunity, all these things for Selma, the birthplace of democracy. I want to show you all something. Let's think about this one. And where's Terrence? We just talking about. I shared this a couple other people. And even when I say it out loud, it's jarring. Think about this. Selma was 1965. Jimmy Carter was elected only 11 years after Selma. You know how short a period of time that is? And that would not have happened without Selma.
Oh, all right.
And there would have been no Bill Clinton, no Barack Obama, or any of these people. Joe Biden even, if not for Selma. So this is very important. Hey, come on in, everybody. As people are coming in. So tonight we're going to talk about the future of Selma, rebuilding Selma, investing in Selma. This ought to be. Would you all not agree with that?
True.
So we are waiting for your. Who waiting on?
We're waiting for Doug Marshall to arrive. I don't know if I'm there.
Do we know where they are?
Let me say this though, y'all. Not in defense of them, but our caterer for our luncheon told me at the last minute that she couldn't do it. So we do what the ancestors do. We take what we have to take what we need. And that lunch turned out to be pretty good, didn't it? Yes. But those young people from Thurgood Marshall were the people serving y'all. So they were serving y'all, and I think what happened, they probably went home and bathed and blah, blah, blah. That's not an excuse, but I'm assuming that's why they're late. But we don't have to cut the trial short because they're late, because the public conversation is afterwards. Let me tell y'all what the trial is about. We can use that time. Oh, we want to do that.
Thank you so much.
Many of y'all heard
They're here.
They're here.
I tell you what,
Okay.
Well, we need to go to the
Just want to get some
microphone.
rules while they coming, okay?
I don't have anything. I have my gavel. What about pen?
Just give the rules of the court.
Okay,
One thing we will do
usually,
today,
hold on, let me say this. Usually, y'all are gracious.
That's what he's saying, they're not in it.
What's the one?
well, these are the lawyers for the state. We're the lawyers for the state, and
Okay,
these
so
are our
now-
two witnesses.
What is the case about?
That's what I'm about to say, Judge.
I said, use that microphone now. Don't hold it by the stem, hold it by the base. Depress it for about 2 seconds in the center. So it'll turn on, okay. See, they're streaming this and it's connected to the
Testing.
system.
Since my voice is so raggedy, thank you, Judge. The Dred Scott decision is over, 165 years old. And that decision, about 10 or 15 years later, the 13th Amendment was passed, the 14th Amendment and the 15th. And the 14th Amendment guaranteed the newly freed African the equal protection of the law and due process of the law. Attorney Sanders, who is somewhere, wrote a law review article called The New Dred, referring to the Dred Scott decision. It's an excellent law review article. The New Dred, in effect, says that that decision, the Dred Scott decision, is still the law of the land when it comes to black people. That we are still being denied the equal protection of the law and the due process of the law, and the plaintiffs are here.
Hold on. So the plaintiffs are petitioning for what?
Judge, they are putting the state of Alabama on trial. We understand the immunity and all those issues, but this is an educational trial.
Okay.
So these young lawyers who are from Texas Southern, they are representing the plaintiff, and I'm representing the bad guys. We're representing the government.
Okay, so thank y'all very much, and we'll give y'all a chance to introduce yourself. I'll need y'all to use those microphones because the trial is being streamed and it's connected to the system. So if you would depress that microphone about 2 seconds, and then it's on. If you pull it closer to you, you can be heard. And if y'all would introduce yourself, and then I want to know what the case is about. And the audience needs to know too. We're not arguing, we just want to know what it's about. Then I give everybody the rules of where we're going. So if y'all would please.
My name is Kiara Williams.
Okay.
I'm a third-year law student at Thurgood Marshall, Texas Southern.
Wonderful.
My name is Katana Clark. I, as well, am a third-year law student at Thurgood Marshall School of Law, Texas Southern University.
And my name is Brenton Ford. I also am a third-year law student at Thurgood Marshall School of Law.
And now what is this case about?
This case is regarding the state of Alabama enacting facially neutral legislation that is watering down the 14th Amendment rights.
All right. Well, now, I don't need to
voter
argue what
suppression.
it's about, so I want people to understand. Gotcha. Now let's introduce who we have here for the defense of the state. And if y'all can remain seated, that's fine. But please use those microphones so you can be heard. Please do this for about 2 seconds, and then you're on. Thank you.
Yes, Your Honor.
You can remain seated.
Oh, I'm just used to.
I know. You can remain seated. That's fine. Let me use the microphone.
All right. I've never been told to sit down as a lawyer in court.
That's all right.
Yes, Your Honor. Attorney Sandra Do Right for White. I'm the attorney for the state of lost and miserable Alabama.
My name is,
I cannot do that.
my name is Sandra Omega White, and I represent the state of Alabama.
All right, thank you. And you all are arguing what on what?
We are arguing for our great governor of Alabama and the state.
All right, thank y'all so much. Now, here's what we're going to do. We're going to limit each side to 30 minutes to present their petition and 30 minutes to present a defense. And then the petitioner would have another 15 minutes to present any rebuttal. And we would use the same rules of examinations that are in play. And also not use the microphone now. You have to use the microphone. Now, if you need to move, you can move. You do not have to ask permission to approach a witness. Just move. Now, you need to ask permission to approach the court, but not any witness. And you have free reign to move. Just take the microphone with you, hold it by the base so you can be heard. That's all I ask. Take it with you, hold it by the base, and be a portable. And so, with that, we're ready for any opening statements you all may have.
Point of order, Judge. Howard University law students were supposed to be here to argue against these young people, and due to a series of...
I thought we had Ms. Obeda White and Ms. Durite.
But I want the audience to know that they thought Howard Law School would be here.
I got it.
And they're not.
Oh, and they were not representing seasoned attorneys. I see.
Yes. And these young people, and we didn't think it was...
I would treat them like I treat non-represented litigants, and I would help them out.
They said they want no special affirmative action.
No, that's not affirmative action. That's just what the courts do. If you're non-represented, it's our job to be sure. Now, we're not going to break the rules for you, but we will help you out.
Judge, that's not fair. That sounds like affirmative action. You can help them out because they're young.
No, that's level the playing field.
Okay.
Thank you. Hey, my report, my rules. Thank you. All right. Y'all can make it first. Do y'all have an opening? Now, you don't have to. Do you have one?
Yes, we have an opening.
Yes. And y'all can remain seated. Thank you.
Sure thing.
Use the microphone.
May it please the court.
Yeah. You want to address the audience now? I had that.
I did. That. I put it out. I think you.
Yeah, y'all moving my stuff. I positioned that thing.
I apologize, Judge.
Yeah, now see, I used to have a bailiff, and
right now,
I came at the last minute without my staff, because I'm going to start putting folk in jail when they act out of order. Thank you so much.
I apologize. That'll work.
May it please the court.
Yes, sir, and as I say, you have free reign. You don't have to ask permission to move. Just permission to approach the bench.
I'm actually not going to use the microphone.
You need the microphone. It's being streamed.
Yeah. That's why I had to bring the podium back.
Cool.
Yeah, and you can turn it around.
Point of order, Judge. People want to know how to access the link for streaming.
Oh, I'm sorry. Listen, I do not have that. Let's see, if you would. We need information on how to access the link for streaming. So, y'all come get one of these microphones and tell us.
Let's move on, Judge. Time is left.
We are using you all system or his system?
Right now, it's my system.
That's what I thought. So, we need some direction quickly. If not, we're going to move on.
Don't move on.
Are we moving on? Go ahead, Counsel. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Life, liberty, and property. 3 pillars of American freedom that the framers understood to be essential to creating a more perfect union. Life, liberty, and property. The 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution reads that, quote, "No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of the law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws." Life, liberty, and property. These 3 pillars systemically have been stolen from Africans since the moment an outsider's hands were laid on their brightest, their bravest, and their most beautiful on the continent. These hands that drag those Africans to this land against their will must reap what they have sown. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my name is Brenton Ford. My colleagues and I are here representing the Thurgood Marshall School of Law and also the plaintiff in this action, the Africans in Selma and all of America who have for far too long have had their just due of life, liberty, and property withheld. Evidence will show in this case that even here, in a city steeped in historical resistance and rebellion, redress has seldom found a home in Selma. Today you will hear testimony from multiple witnesses, one of whom an expert in American legislative history, both reasonings and court rulings, will explain the intricacies of the white supremacist American legislature and its practices, starting from the Dred Scott case to the current state legislation at issue. You will also hear testimony from a witness whose decades of research and expertise focuses on the social, psychological, emotional, and ultimately financial damage inflicted upon the Americans in Selma through generations of oppressive tactics used by the Alabama state government. Through a combination of these testimonies, the evidence will be undeniable. These Africans who have been deprived of their lives, their liberties, and their properties deserve their just due in the sum of $20 billion. And they are here to demand those dues paid in full.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Man, please come on.
All right.
I'm representing the great state of Alabama, and our beloved governor, Ms. Adams. That young man sounds very eloquent, and I truly believe he believes what he's saying. But he has not said one word other than rhetoric to show that black folk in my beloved state is deprived of life, liberty, and property. We suspect, Your Honor, that this is just a showcase, just to make black folk feel good. Because the truth is, Alabama has gone a long ways. As a matter of fact, I heard one of the black leaders say that earlier today. Black folk have come a long ways. I acknowledge that we did some bad things back in the past. It was wrong for them to beat those folk on the platform, on that bridge. But just those days are over. This is a new day in Alabama. Look at Alabama. We have black judges. We have you, Your Honor. We even have a black bitch. We even have a black judge on the Supreme Court. Progress has been made, Your Honor. And guess what?
Are you talking about on the Alabama State Supreme Court now?
Judge, I'm talking about on the U.S. Supreme Court. That's higher than the Alabama Supreme Court. That's higher.
You didn't make that clear. I was wondering. Thank you.
Now, over in the state capitol, we even have a statue of Amelia Gordon. Did y'all know that? The lady that was beating on the, yes, it was bad to beat her on that bridge, but it was misguided. Our governor that was there with that statue, recognizing her. I know that old Sanders said, but she looks like a white woman in chocolate. But she still was a black woman. So let's be thankful of the progress Selma has made, that Alabama has made. Let's be clear. That young man that was killed in Selma last night, he was killed by a black man, not by the slave. Let's be clear that all the poverties in Selma, it's not because of the laws. It's because some black folk, like some white folk, don't want to work. They just want to get ahead. The young lady.
I'm sorry, this is an opening. You gotta work.
I'm back through your arm.
But try to use your microphone a little better. We got yours up there. Sir, we got yours up there. Go ahead, I'm sorry, Counsel.
This is the last thing I gotta say, Judge. I got a call right in this courtroom a few minutes ago. Young black man was freed by a black judge for felony murder. She found there was no evidence for murder. I just got a call from my mom, because she know I'm a good white woman. I'm a good black woman that don't know what she's doing. Okay. And you And I have to stop and recognize these students coming from Birmingham, y'all. Give them a hand. Okay, let me go back. So all I'm saying, Judge, we respect these young people. We know they want to do the right thing, but y'all have been just misled.
One more minute.
One more minute to say this. The evidence will show that Bloody Sunday is no longer bloody. It's Bloody Saturday. And who's killing these children? It's not Jim Clark. It's black men killing each other. You can't blame Governor of Alabama for that. The new dread is the dread of black men and black politicians who sell out to old people. It ain't my fault if they sell them out. Right here in this courthouse, I heard, this is what I heard now. I heard that you got a majority black commission and they decided to put a white man as the county attorney who represents white supremacists. Preach! Hey, the government didn't do that. Black people did that to each other. So don't take out your score. You sure?
One more second.
I'm through, y'all. I think the evidence will show that the governor of Alabama and the all-white Republican legislature is all-white Republican because black folks don't vote.
All right.
Blame us. Thank you, y'all.
Thank you. All right, just to reiterate, we have, each side is going to have 30 minutes to present the case, so let's move expeditiously. And I want to let the audience know that normally we allow the audience to be our jury. You still would be the jury, but we will not have time for you to deliberate as a group. So we're going to ask you to deliberate within your mind, but don't make any decisions until all the evidence is in. And so I want you to deliberate as you live throughout the year, but don't make a decision until you have all the evidence. So y'all can call your first witness or make your first presentation.
We would like to call our first witness to the stand.
All right.
Oh,
That witness?
you're coming up here.
Yes, ma'am.
You going up there? I mean, everybody's way today, huh?
Depress that microphone. About 2 seconds.
Just turn it on.
Thank you, man. Please state your name.
Yes, my name is Olimata Tao.
All right, thank you. Ms. Tao, go ahead.
Hello, Mr. Tao. Can you state your name for the record again, please?
Yes, my name is Olimata Tao.
That takes time now.
And Olimata Tao, what do you do?
Olimata.
Olimata. What do you do for your career?
I'm a journalist and a publicist.
And what do you cover when you are journalizing and publicizing things?
Well, I like to go around the country covering marches, struggles, systematic oppression, and how young people deal with it.
And how long have you been doing that?
I've been doing this for about 30 years.
And would you consider yourself an expert?
I sure am.
So is it fair to say that you focus on Selma?
Yeah, I focus on Selma and Selma's impact on the world.
Okay, and can you tell us a little bit more about?
If I could help y'all out, normally we have one person examine the witness. So now y'all want to do a tag team?
Oh yeah, totally. We were just priming up the witness.
Okay, well, your time is running.
And when it comes to Selma, ma'am, can you explain a little bit about crime in Selma and how that affects the world?
Well, it's twofold when you look at the crime in Selma, because you have to look at the state of Selma and the impact that Selma had on the world. So even though the world benefited from Selma, we have to look at how has Selma benefited from the world when you look at policies, when you look at financially, etc. So as a young person who comes out of Selma, I feel that Selma hasn't benefited from how we impacted the world. So.
And what are some of the indicators with that? Would you say that it might be poverty or things of that nature?
There's extreme poverty in Selma. I was away living in Africa for a few years, And when I came back to Selma last year, I was flabbergasted when I saw homes of individuals that I loved, civil rights leaders, foot soldiers, and these communities are completely dilapidated. You go to certain communities where there were wealthy blacks or, you know, middle-class blacks. These areas are totally dilapidated homes, or they're drug homes, or
Your Honor, I'm going to object to this line of questioning as irrelevant to these proceedings.
Can you respond?
Yeah, this is not irrelevant to the proceedings because she's just laying the background for the narrative that we're trying to construe and
that
Selma's impact on the world.
All right, and now how does that relate to the issue of the state not enforcing the 14th Amendment and the equal protections guaranteed by it?
Because the equal protections of the 14th Amendment are actually supposed to protect people in this state, and so if it's adverse, if someone's being adversely affected by these legislative proceedings or lack of so, which we're trying to lay out through her personal experience, you know, that's.
Your Honor, we're not clear now. Is this a lay witness or is this an actual expert?
Well, they were laying a foundation for her to be deemed an expert, but they haven't offered her as an expert yet. So we haven't gotten that point. I've been asking them whether they want to offer or tender her as an expert. But now, as far as the issue at hand, are y'all trying to show the effect as your evidence?
Yes, 100%.
What does the U.S. Supreme Court say about that?
Well,
the results of something.
We're trying to show that the effect of the grievance should lead in damages that we're trying to receive.
Now, didn't the U.S. Supreme Court say that that is not viable anymore? You cannot just show just the effect of and actually have to show that that person actually participated in that action and that person actually directed or did that action?
Yes, sir, exactly.
All right. So how is that testimony going to do that?
We didn't get to the part where we can talk or ask her.
All right, I will overrule tentatively your objection and
yes,
we'll proceed. Go ahead.
Thank you.
I'll start the clock back. Yes, sir.
Appreciate it. Now, when it comes down to the observations that you made when you came to Selma and the dilapidated neighborhoods and the poverty, do you have, through your expertise in news reporting and legislative actions, do you have any cause and effect relationship or have any theory about the cause and effect relationship?
Well, I just found it, I found it
well, let me do this. Counsel was objecting to her giving expert opinion and not being deemed an expert, and so I don't want to stop counsel from presenting her case. So now, she's not an expert at this point. Cool. She hasn't been offered that yet. So you asked her an expert question.
I asked her through her personal experience.
You wanted her to give a lay opinion, a question? Well, I'm going to sustain that. If you want to offer her as an expert, we deal with it.
Okay, I would like to offer her as an expert then.
All right. Any further in your objection, counsel? Well, hearing nothing, she would be deemed an expert. You can go ahead, counsel. You can ask that question.
Sure thing. And through your personal experience, can you explain the cause and effect relationship?
Yeah, what I noticed that in the black neighborhoods, it was a lot of poverty, but in the white neighborhoods, they were living well. They didn't have dilapidated houses. Their school districts were doing well. The school districts in our neighborhoods were completely different. So I just felt that there was a major division when it comes to how the resources were being divided by black and white communities based on color and racism.
Counsel, let me put a pin on your question. Are you offering her as an expert in forensic journalism or something?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That'd be her tag, forensic journalist. Thank you.
Cool.
Which means she investigates and stuff. Gotcha.
Exactly.
You can continue.
Okay, my next question.
I had to help him out. So.
Yes, right. Yes, right.
So, as a forensic investigator, do you think that any legislative actions by the state government could have affected the dilapidation that you saw?
Oh, definitely. It starts definitely from the 60s to the point where people were beaten for standing in line just to vote. People would be asked constitutional questions like what's the second, third, fourth amendment, stuff that normal citizens, if you didn't go to law school, would know. Or they would take like a bubblegum machine and ask you how many red pieces of bubblegum in the machine. So there have been so many different things that have happened to the citizens in Selma breaching their constitutional rights as human beings. And
do you see a relationship between voter suppression and that type of poverty and violence?
Definitely, because first, what it does is it brings in an environment of fear. And when the people have fear, they're not going to come out in the mass to vote. So intimidation is the first thing. The second thing is that when you look at voter suppression and how the resources and how they redistrict the lines and things of that nature. So there are different areas of voter suppression that have to be looked at and how and the impact that it's having on Black communities and minority communities around America, specifically Selma.
And when you say redistricting or redrawing the district lines, can you go into depth about what that means?
Well, like for instance, you'll have some communities that might have been majority Black, they might have had political power, but because maybe they were growing or they got too much political power based on the status quo, they were redistricted so they wouldn't have that power or they wouldn't be able to have a majority Black vote or majority Black leadership. So and that's happening all over, not just in Selma. It's happening in different places to just stop us from having power, really.
And is there a formal term for that type of governmental action?
I think it's called gerrymandering, but I can't remember.
And Jerry?
Now, your expert witness is thinking. Now that goes to the weight of her testimony. As to whether I'm gonna, or whether this jury is gonna give her any credence or not. Y'all need, now you're 8 minutes and 45 seconds with this witness too, now keep that in mind. Go ahead.
We'd like to pass the witness.
Any cross?
Yes, Your Honor.
May I begin, Your Honor?
Yes, ma'am. Oh, you don't have your microphone.
Oh, I probably don't need it, but I'll take it.
You need to cut the
You need a
screen.
microphone.
Okay. Yes, Your Honor.
Sweetheart.
Now, we've been listening to your testimony, and could you just please give me your last name again? I don't want to botch it.
Tao, Al with a T.
Tao.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, Ms. Tao, isn't it true you are not actually an expert, are you?
I am an expert.
You have a PhD in white and Black relationships? Sure,
I deemed her an expert. She's an expert. An expert is anyone with the sufficient training, skill, knowledge, and I have deemed her so. So she's an expert in what I deem her in.
Oh, yes, Your Honor. I was not clear that she had been proffered and accepted as an expert. The other side was not asked
I have 30
whether
years.
we accept her.
I have 30 years in this job.
Ms. Tao, I'm handling this. Now, she's an expert in forensic journalism.
Yes, Your Honor. May I delve into what that is?
You can.
Thank
But
you.
what I'm saying is that she is an expert. Now you can ask questions as to whether the jury can consider whether they want to believe her or not.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Don't
Thank you for
sound like being
that.
an expert.
All right.
Thank you. Go ahead.
So, forensic expert, forensic journalist, is that what your title is?
Yes, ma'am.
And so is that safe to say that you've written articles about the subject that you're speaking on right now?
Yes, ma'am. I've been published in Ebony Magazine, Source Magazine, Creative Loafing, Final Call. Yes, ma'am.
And isn't it true that none of those are academic journals?
None of them are academic journals, but I have been published.
Let's keep our chatter down, please. Go ahead.
No further questions.
All right, thank you. You call your next, and with any redirect, the clock is ticking. Any redirect?
No redirect, Your Honor.
Thank you. You come down, man. You call your
Thank
next
you.
witness.
We
would like to call our next witness to the stand, Dr. Winbush.
All right, Dr. Winbush. If you could be seated there. And once you get seated as possible, please state your name for the record and take the time to state your name for the record.
My name is Ray Winbush.
All right, thank you. You go ahead, Counsel.
Thank you, Mr. Winbush. Can you please tell us what you do for a living?
I teach at Morgan State University in Baltimore, Maryland.
And what subject or subjects do you teach?
Psychology and Black Studies.
How long have you been teaching?
This will be my 51st year.
Would you consider yourself to be an expert in those subjects?
Yes.
Your Honor, we would like to offer this witness as an expert in Black Studies.
All right, is there any objections?
None whatsoever, Your
All right,
Honor.
well, he was deemed an expert in Black studies. You can continue.
Thank you.
I got
Dr.
scared of
Winbush,
that one, didn't you? All right, go ahead.
Dr. Winbush, what is oppression?
Oppression is when a group of people simply view another group of people as less than, inferior, and they do this by creating so-called science, literature, the whole mechanisms of the state or nation will simply put them at a lower economic level, psychological level, and then try to convince other people that what they're saying about this group of people is true.
Okay. What races in America would you say have been oppressed?
Black folk, Asians, Native Americans. In fact, the only people that probably haven't been are white people.
Can you describe slavery in America?
In what, 25 words or less?
Just a general overview of what slavery is and was.
Well, from roughly 1619, there's a book about that right now that an oppressive governor of Florida is trying to not get people to read. From till 1865, enslavement of black people in this country was legal, it was done, and so forth. But you got to look at after 1865, there was still another 100 and something years of oppression of black people in the form of Jim Crowism, violence, and segregation.
What happened in 1865?
Well, supposedly black people were freed from slavery, but you have to put free in quotation marks because there were other systems, because racism is a system. And it is, so you know, what replaced enslavement were police departments, the sharecropping system, which took place here in Selma, by the way, in a variety of ways to keep black folk oppressed.
You mentioned that free is a loose term. What happened after 1865? What is Reconstruction?
Well, Reconstruction was probably, as was mentioned earlier, a very brief period where black folk were, quote, equal. But again, whenever black people in this country have gained, or seemingly gained rights, white people feel like it's taking something from them. So there was a formation of the Ku Klux Klan in Pulaski, Tennessee in 1865. So a lot of things took place in 1865, including organized violence against black people.
Did this violence include lynchings?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the Tuskegee Institute says there were 7,000 people lynched, but there's estimates that it was at least 4 times that much, because a lot of lynchings were not recorded. I'm on the lynching commission in the state of Maryland right now, And we've uncovered already over 300 people that were lynched that were never recorded or documented.
Can you tell us about convict leasing?
Well, see, I think white folks are very clever at, calling things.
Your Honor, what white folk are he talking about? We object talking about white folk. That sounds very racist.
Well, let's be more specific, because we are talking about the state, not the white folk in general. So I'll sustain that. Please ask another question.
Did Alabama practice convict leasing?
Yes, it did. And particularly in the Birmingham steel mills, that if a black person was convicted of a crime, what they would do then is instead of just putting them in jail, they would have relationships with the steel mills of Birmingham and other factories, and they would lease them out for periods of time. And we don't know to this day how many, there's estimates as high as 1,000 black men were killed in the Birmingham mines, making steel between, you could say, the relationship between the legal system of Alabama, corporations, and, landowners, and, mainly landowners, to utilize another form of slavery.
What type of crimes led black people to be convicted during this time period?
Well, one was loitering. There were actual laws saying that if 2 or 3, I think it was 3 in Alabama, 3 black men were standing on the corner at certain hours of the night, that they could be arrested for loitering. It's really interesting. When I was teaching at Vanderbilt University in Nashville, I actually had 3 black faculty members. We were standing together, and the police called us, said, what were you doing standing on campus? 3 black men who were professors. So the point I'm making is that many of those laws that occurred during enslavement and afterwards are still in effect today. A lot of people get very suspicious when 3 black men are standing on the street corner. We have, what's those laws in New York? I forget what, stop and frisk laws are examples of those are holdovers from slavery.
Can you explain how the years following 1865 up to 2023 relate back to slavery?
Well, see, I don't think that much has changed. I heard counsel say that, things have changed, since enslavement here in, Selma and so forth. But we have the residual effects of, intergenerational trauma. We have laws that won't directly say black people can't read. It's against the law that black people can read. But in places like Florida, they'll say we're going to suppress, black history. Those are residual effects. And, convict leasing system, more black men and black women are incarcerated now per capita than white people or any other group in this country. So, again, racism is a system. It's not just what an individual does, but it's how the whole apparatus of the United States operates against black people in this country.
Counsel, you had this with us for 9 minutes. I just want you to know.
I know. Last question, Dr. Winbush. You mentioned incarceration. Would you say that mass incarceration is a direct relation or connection to slavery?
Oh, absolutely. My former student, Michelle Alexander, who wrote the book, what's the name of her book?
Jim Crow.
I taught her at Vanderbilt, and she proves that in her book. There's no doubt about the incarceration of black men and black women increasingly are directly related. No doubt about that.
Thank you, Dr. Winbush. We pass the witness.
I thank Ed Crow.
Yes, Your Honor, if I could sit. Thank you.
Please, thank you.
Dr. Winters. Doctor is before your name, right?
Yes,
you
ma'am.
do have a doctor.
Yes.
And it's an earned doctor. Nobody gave it to you, right?
Yes.
And you had to go to a university to get that doctor.
Yes.
Well, in 1855, could you have become a doctor?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
In 1855.
Hold on, counsel, hold on. State your objection with some certainty.
Objection, Your Honor.
Thank you. Yeah, there you go. Now, what's your objection?
Argumentative.
Sustained.
Dr. Winbush, what race do you consider yourself?
I'm African.
Do you consider yourself an oppressed person?
Yeah. I mean, in many respects. I mean, people who, I know white people, some white people, who have the level of attainment that I have, and they make more money. There's certain neighborhoods in Baltimore that I can't move into.
But isn't it a fact, doctor, that there's a lot of poor white people that don't have a PhD?
Sure.
And isn't it a fact that a lot of poor white people never get to go to college or university?
Objection, relevance.
Overruled. Go ahead. You can ask the question.
Well, there's a lot of black people that don't have PhDs, you know.
Exactly. A lot of black people, a lot of white people.
Right.
What laws do you know of in the state of Alabama that directs white people to get a worse education than black people? Do you know any law in Alabama?
I don't understand the question.
I didn't think you would.
Counsel, we don't need those side remarks. You can continue.
Now, I heard you say that you don't think nothing has changed. Did you not testify to that?
The system of white supremacy is probably stronger now in America than it was in 1865 during enslavement.
During enslavement, wasn't it against the law for black men to read and write and for their children to read and write?
Yes, it was.
Can you read and write?
Yes.
Can your children read and write?
Yes.
What color is the judge sitting up there?
Black.
Would there have been a black judge in 1865?
No. But there wouldn't have been an internet in 1865.
That's a good answer. But let me follow up with this question. Are you suggesting that the internet is responsible for the condition of black people?
No, what I'm suggesting is that just because black people can do certain things now, black men in certain areas of this country, like George Floyd, still are oppressed by police and are killed by police. So, you know, the oppression of black people, you know, a word that I defined earlier, is still occurring in this country. We still have laws that are being made in this country that say that there's certain things that black people cannot read. You know, that my colleague, Nicole Hannah-Jones, her book 1619 is being banned in several school districts throughout the United States.
But what about Alabama? It's not banned in Alabama. Alabama's on trial, not the whole United States.
Well, but see, I think that racism occurs, you have to be very good at understanding how racism occurs. Neely Fuller says if you do not understand racism, white supremacy, what it is, and how it works, you will be confused by everything you think you understand. And a lot of us are very confused about how racism works. Just because Alabama isn't, I'd have to check your facts on that too, because I'm not sure that there aren't books being suppressed in Alabama.
Imagine this, right here in this city of Selma, there was a majority white city, black city council that gave an acre of land to the daughters of the Confederates to honor.
Objection, Your Honor. The counsel.
I've not finished my question.
Well, hold on. What's the objection?
Counsel is testifying.
I'm asking.
Well, she's pressing the question, but you got 1 more minute with your cross.
Okay. This, right here in Selma, a majority white county, black government, gave an acre of land to honor the Ku Klux Klan. Was the state of Alabama responsible for those black people's thinking and their actions? Are you blaming the state for these misguided Negroes not loving their own history and their own time? Can you blame white folks for that?
Well, I blame the system of white supremacy for that. And in my first book, I said that we shouldn't call some black folk Uncle Tom. We should call them super slaves. These are black people in power that do things on the behest of white people. Clarence Thomas is a super slave. And I would suggest that the people that did that in Selma, I would classify them as super slaves.
But did you sue the super slaves?
You should.
I agree.
Thank you, Pastor. That's going to end your cross examination. Yes. You're out of time on that. Your 5 minutes is up on that cross. And so, any redirect?
Just one question.
All right.
Dr. Wimbush, would you say that Alabama still actively practices racism?
Oh, no doubt. No doubt about that.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you. Thank you. You can have it. I'm going to stop the clock for 1 second. I have to say something and maybe give you all a bit of history so you can understand. Because a question was asked about the race of the judge up here, and I want to say something. The first black judge in Dallas County, the first black circuit judge, was a fellow named Roderick B. Thomas. He actually held the seat I'm holding. He was elected back in 1874. Now let me explain something to you. He first was elected, he was the first black circuit court clerk. He was elected in 1869. See, right after slavery with the 15th Amendment, black folks had the right to vote, and black folks voted in mass and elected black folks. He was the first black circuit clerk, and then in 1873, he ran for Selma City Council. He was the first black Selma City Councilman. That history has been erased now, but he was the first black city councilman. He also decided to go for circuit judge, and he became judge in the seat in this courthouse. He's a circuit judge. But what happened when he was elected in January, the powers that be went to him and said, "We don't want you to be our circuit judge. You need to resign." He refused to resign. So what happened? They went to Montgomery and got the laws changed, and the whole Dallas County Circuit Court was abolished. You know, the legislative session started that February. And so the whole Dallas County Circuit Court was abolished, and therefore he never got a chance to serve. And then 2 years later, they reestablished the Circuit Court and appointed a white person to, be the judge. But Roderick Thomas, they ran him out of town, and he ended up going to Arkansas. Now there's a statue in Arkansas that bears him, but that's the history in this county that a lot of folks don't realize. I'm not the first person from Dallas County to be elected. Roderick Thomas was back then. And then in 1901, the Alabama Constitution was changed to take black folks' rights to vote out. And that same 1901 Constitution is still in place now, whether you realize it or not. And so there's a big debate about changing the Constitution. They want to get out all the racist language, but they forget about all the oppressive stuff too. So there's a whole big debate about that. But just for educational purposes, Dallas County is no, oh wait, you know what? I'm gonna still be neutral and detached though. I'm not gonna be crazy against the state.
Thank you for that, Judge.
Judge, you made it our day. We love you, Judge.
We're happy that you can still be.
I'm kind of making that case, but I'll be.
Judge, you make it our day.
Now you stepping over.
Well, but the governor and the legislature had a hand in abolishing the court to keep a black man from being a judge.
Now you're testifying, Judge.
Well, he right.
State get a fair trial, Judge?
Well, the state's going to get a fair trial. I'm going to be neutral and detached.
I think this is off.
You all have 10 more minutes to present your case. You all use 6 minutes and 50 seconds with your cross. I didn't count that 6 minutes and 30 seconds with your cross. I didn't count that against them. So y'all have 10 more minutes. You call your next witness. The clock starts back again. You call your next witness.
We'd like to call Malika, the next witness, to the stand.
Now, who is Malika? She's the next one. Does Malika have a full name?
Senator Sanders.
See, just they get mad at us when we call black women by their first name, and they can't even call the senator by
Was she on the list?
Well, I was not given any pre-trial instructions, so come on. Please state your name.
My name is Malika Sanders Fortier.
Thank
Senator.
you, Council. Y'all ever watch that show? Music going. You know, the clock is still running. Now they got 9 more minutes.
Ms. Fortier, what do you do for a living?
I'm an attorney.
And Ms. Fortier, as an attorney, do you have expertise on the Alabama legislature?
No, but I think the reason that you have me here is because I was a member of the Alabama legislature when some of the issues were debated and dealt with that you're raising today.
And some of those issues, can you delve into those for us?
Well, in every session, there are always controversial issues dealing with, I mean, never outwardly about race, but certainly some things that are dealing with race. And according to what I've read about this particular case, there was some major issues raised around whether or not there was a fear of black empowerment and white disempowerment driving certain things in the legislature. And so I do have some knowledge about those things.
Can you share some of that knowledge with us, please?
Well, so as a member of the Alabama State Senate, I was keenly aware of how much of policy is driven by our history. And so as such, I thought it was important that people on both sides, Republicans and Democrats, we didn't have any independents in the Senate at that time, knew and understood a lot about history. Because oftentimes, if you don't know something, if you don't know about your past, right, collectively as a state, but you make policies based on culture, thoughts, feelings, opinions, oftentimes you will perpetuate things without even thinking them through. And so as such, I invited, I knew that many of my black colleagues had been to the Legacy Museum there in Montgomery, Alabama, but I invited white Republicans to go because I thought it was important to help people to raise their consciousness about where is it coming from. When you make a decision, let's say about Medicaid expansion, right? Are you really making that decision based just purely on the things that you think that you're making it based on, or are there things underneath that, like history, that drive those decisions, that lead you to think, oh, well, these people they really don't need that help because they can get this or they can get that. So whether it was in education, healthcare, I noticed and realized I had been trained very well by the attorney over there. No, that's inside. About my history, so I could see the patterns of how that 1901 Constitution was driving our state policies, even when people were not aware of that.
Do you think that learning this history is incumbent upon an individual or a community to push that for them?
Well, for the very reason I just shared, I think it's very important, and I really don't see this as a black issue or white issue. I think if Alabama is going to move forward and be an excellent place to live for all people have to know our history. And it doesn't matter whether we think it's good history or bad history, if we don't understand what it is where we've come from together, then there's no way to make policies that help us all, because there's been, I think you had another witness, because I was allowed to stay in the courtroom earlier, who talked about our history and how it affects the different systems, right? So I think if we don't understand that history collectively, then we'll always deal in pseudoscience, we'll always deal in stereotypes, and we'll always deal in how we were raised, our culture, rather than taking an objective look in terms of policy to make sure that our state prospers, and that means every single human being who lives here.
Thank you, Your Honor, or thank you, Ms.
I do have one other thing
Yes,
I
go
want
on.
to say that goes back to your earlier.
And unsolicited answer?
Well, it
No
actually,
objection.
We have no objections, she are good witness.
it actually is an answer to a question that they asked already. And it is also in the briefing. There's a question about fear and what is driving our political process. And so I actually was in committee when the whole thing around critical race theory came up.
Bingo.
In our, in the legislative session, last session. And one of the things that I made clear is that we are allowing fear to run not just Alabama, but the nation. We are literally allowing fear to just run everything. One of the things that came up in that session is that there was the sister of one of the young ladies who was killed, one of the girls who was killed in Birmingham. One of the 4 little girls, her sister was there, and she said, please don't pass this bill. Please do not pass this bill, because I won't be able to tell the story about what happened to my little sister. And the sponsor of the bill, who was a freshman, came in with me. He said, no ma'am, we are not going to change anything around that, right? What we are saying is something different. We're not trying to change that. If it's a historical fact, you can tell that historical fact. Well, when you read this bill, and this is proof. In fact, when I first heard about critical race theory being an attorney, I looked it up. The woman who, one of the women who helped to create it said, this is a complex legal theory. As soon as I listened to her, I was like, we're not debating about critical race theory. Because most of us can't even understand what it is. So that is not the debate, right? So what really is it that we are discussing, right? And so as I ask questions of the gentleman sponsoring the bill, I'm saying, I read the bill. Truly, that bill could have been something that Dr. King wrote in 1965. Please, we won't discriminate. We won't discriminate. And all of that was driven by a fear that somehow white people are going to be discriminated against. Even though there's not a single black person in statewide office in all of Alabama. Somehow they are fearful that they're going to be discriminated against. And so I just want to say, based on these debates that we had in the legislature, that this is clearly a fear-driven situation.
Can you tell us about...
Your Honor, we'd now like to ask for the witness to be passed. We feel the time is up.
Your Honor, that's not allowed.
Hold on.
We're asking for the
Hold
witness
on.
to be
Y'all
passed.
actually have 20 more seconds. I'm keeping the time right here. See, they use 6 minutes and 30 seconds on all their processes. I have 36 minutes, 10.27 seconds on my chronometer here.
Yes, sir.
So your time is about to be up, and I'm going to cut it off unless they want to.
Judge, they did ask me for 5 more minutes.
5 minutes, okay.
And they did ask me for 5 minutes. Not that this witness can go both ways. I'm listening.
Look, y'all got 5 minutes and 20 seconds. You can go ahead.
Ms. Fortier, can you tell us about the mayor of Selma?
Mayor James Perkins?
Yes, ma'am.
He's the first African-American mayor of Selma.
Thank you. We would like to pass the witness now.
Any cross? Any cross?
Your Honor, may I remain seated, please?
Yes, ma'am, of course.
Thank you. So, Ms. Fortier, am I pronouncing it correctly?
You are.
You just gave us a whole I have a dream speech, didn't you? Boy, I tell you, you made our case. Look at you, prominent, successful black attorney. Yes, Your Honor, I'm getting to it.
All right.
I'm getting to it. Isn't it true that you are in a club of people who basically get along with each other? Wouldn't you say that's true?
Objection, but.
A club of people
What's your objection?
who basically get along with each other.
I have an objection on that has been.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. What's your
It's vague, Your Honor. What is a club?
All
Be more
right,
specific.
please re-ask your question.
Yes, Your Honor, and just also, this is cross-examination.
I know, it's a process, yeah, why did
Okay.
I on cross?
Yes, Your Honor. Let's get it again.
Vague on this club, she asked, that's what I'm ruling on.
The club that I'm referring to is a club of senators and elected officials who very prominently sit in the seat in the halls of legislative justice in Alabama. Is that true or not?
I don't know if you've looked at the news, but there has been a lot of controversial issues and a lot of struggle in the Alabama state legislature.
And I'm looking for a yes or no answer in terms of your position.
I would not say that it's a club of people who just get along.
Would you say that you're a part of a community of folks who basically work the laws and get along? You don't see a major problem with the we shall overcome theory?
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered.
Has not been asked or answered.
Hold on, you can ask a question.
Shall I rephrase, Your Honor?
Yes,
please.
Let's try to separate that out if we can. No further questions, Your Honor.
I'm so sorry, but I can't be
No further questions.
No question has been propounded.
I want to judge, we do, with all of the,
You all are seasoned attorneys now. You all know it's one person to examine. Anybody can object, but one person examines.
This is a point of personal privilege. She wanted to ask a question, this young high school student.
Oh, yes.
And
Please,
they are sitting here, we are so proud of them at both tables, and she
Well,
wants
please
to have.
introduce yourself.
I'm Sydney Preaching, and I'm a sophomore at Selma High School.
What's your question? What's your question of this witness? Y'all have to remember something. I'm the circuit judge here. I had to be elected. I had to treat my constituents nice. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, my question is, do you believe that Alabama can change? Like, can we improve, you know, with the racism in our community?
Well, I think our history, going back to history, shows that over time, we have made some changes. And I believe that we're at a critical moment in our history as a nation and as a world, that if we don't change, there's a crisis that we'll be forced to change one way or the other.
Any more questions?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any more questions? Hold on. Senator 48, you're not finished yet.
I apologize, Judge.
Thank you very much.
I actually practiced before him, so I have to
redirect.
be on my best behavior.
Any redirect. The clock won't start back ticking in a second. You see, I had to keep us on the time schedule. And I want Mark Thompson to know we respect him. No, he won't be on time.
Let her ask a question. Let her ask a question.
Introduce yourself.
Hello everyone, my name is Mackenzie Lewis and I am the and I am the president of the Youth Advisory Board for Foot Soldiers Park and Education Center. And that is also the vice president as well. Oh, and then I also have a question for you, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you, sorry, I can take my seat now.
Yes. Please use the mic and ask your question.
Do you think that passing the legislation will improve Alabama?
Do you mean, is there legislation that can improve Alabama? Yes, I do believe that there is some legislation that could pass that would improve Alabama, such as Medicaid expansion.
And can you explain that a little bit?
So we have many people right here in this community who do not have health care. Many of the folks who cannot afford health care are low-income people. In fact, I don't know if she's here today, but there's a woman who lives in this community. Her name is Callie Greer. Her daughter literally died. She kept going back to the hospital over and over again. And she had a lump in her breast. She did not, her husband was a barber. She had no health care. She went over and over again, and they would just do a little something and send her home. But this was actually in Montgomery, even though the mom lives here now. She went to the hospital until the lump in her breast started smelling. And at that point, the doctors finally said, we have to do something. And when they did, they weren't able to do anything because they had waited until the cancer had progressed so much, until the money was wasted that they spent. Whereas if we had had Medicaid expansion, she would have been able, because many of these diseases we now have the technology. You know, these are life and death policies that we're dealing with. We're no longer, it's not just, you know, do you want health care, right? I've represented families, and there are certain situations that if a child doesn't get certain kind of medical attention, you can take that child away from a parent. And so the healthcare system is linked to the judicial system, is linked to other systems. And so when we don't provide health care in a nation, in one of the richest nations of the world, if we don't provide basics like health care, then there's blood on our hands.
Any other questions?
No further questions.
All right, thank y'all for that. I do want y'all to know, I realized what happened. Y'all decided to use the high school students since I was partial to them to get y'all more time. And I didn't have that time against y'all. I want y'all to know that was a good season strategy. But now y'all, these law students know more than y'all think. They knew how to cater to the judge. That's a good season strategy. I like that. Any other questions? You can come down after this. Y'all have any other questions? Y'all have 3 more minutes.
We have one last quick witness.
Right in front of the camera.
We would like to call Tony Browder to the stage.
All right, Tony Browder.
Oh.
You don't have 3 minutes to testify. Yeah, please state your name.
My name is Anthony Browder.
All right, what do you currently do, Mr. Browder?
Historian, writer, lecturer.
And how long have you done this?
40-something years.
All right, we're going to dive right in because we're short of time.
Sure.
All right. Can you give us a little bit more information? What is the Civil Rights Movement?
Civil rights movement was an effort on the part of disenfranchised Americans to assert their rights as citizens of this country to freedom, justice, and equality.
Okay. And then, can you explain a little bit about the connection between the historical oppression and the lack of African American history?
Well, there's no accident that when Africans were stolen from their homeland, enslaved and in America, and forced to work for free for over 150 years, one of the things that their enslavers had to do in order to ensure that they would be perfect for the job was to deny them any ability to remember who they were prior to their theft, sale, and enslavement. So it meant the erasure of the historical and cultural memory. So they would become whoever their oppressors and owners now said that they were. Soulless beings who had never contributed to the development of culture and civilization in the history of mankind.
And can you tell us how that links to the current issues of poverty, high school dropouts, black on black crime?
Sure. What you are is based on what you know. And if someone limits your capacity to know what your potential is as a human being, then that restricts your ability to earn a decent living. It restricts your ability or your capacity to think as a human being, to function as a human being. So the efforts that were made in order to limit our education were designed specifically to ensure that generations of former enslaved Africans would also be locked into a system of poverty.
Okay, and then just a couple more questions to be quick. Where does the movement stand now, currently? Right here.
Where does the movement stand in Alabama? I would dare say that the current state of Africans in Alabama is probably as bad, if not as worse, as it was 58 years ago with the Selma Bloody Sunday incident. The clock has moved backwards.
Whoa.
Okay,
Tell the truth and shame the devil, huh?
Well, y'all using strategy here. Go ahead.
What effect did the election of President Obama have on the movement and racism with the country?
Well, in reality,
good question.
The election of Barack Hussein Obama set in motion efforts on the part of conservative white Republicans primarily to take back their country because they were fearful that a black president of the wealthiest, most powerful nation in human history would pass laws that would do to white people what white people have done to black people. And so there were organizations that were created in order to roll back the clock. And as a consequence of the election of Barack Hussein Obama, we had the election of one of the worst presidents in the history of the United States of America. And that has led to efforts on the part of other like-minded individuals to take back this country.
That's right.
And taking back this country means to put us back into positions prior to the Civil Rights era, put us back into positions as close to our possible enslavement as humanly possible. That's what we're faced with right now.
Thank you, Mr. Robert. No further questions.
In the cross, and remember, y'all gonna have 20 minutes to do your defense. This cross is eating into it. Go ahead.
Just two questions, Mr. Brown. I know you are highly respected and intelligent historian. That history tells you that because black people marched and were willing to die, the laws changed. Isn't that a fact?
I'd be hard pressed to say that they changed for the better. They may be changed temporarily, but we see many of those laws are being rescinded now, being stripped away.
But my question is, at the time, they did change. The Voting Rights Act was passed after 6 months after Bloody Sunday.
It was passed, but voting rights have been rescinded.
That's not my question, Mr. Anthony.
Well, I can't answer your question without telling you the truth.
The truth
Do you want me to lie? I mean, I can be penalized for lying.
Sir, please respond to the question.
I'm sorry.
Please respond to the question. There's no exchange, please respond to the question.
Yes, sir.
The truth is, Mr. Browder, that because thousands of black people were willing to march and risk their lives for change, there was some change. Isn't that a fact?
That is a fact.
And isn't the truth that black people have stopped marching, stopped protesting, and they want to blame white folk because they're in the same condition?
Oh, I don't think so.
Well, that's all.
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Ryder, you said that the part of the Voting Rights Act was rescinded. Is that correct? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, we have seen efforts to do away with voting on Sunday. We've seen efforts in Georgia, if I'm not mistaken, where it's now illegal to give people standing in line to vote water.
That's right.
We've seen numerous efforts to make it as difficult as possible for people of African descent to exercise their right as citizens of the United States and vote.
I'll give y'all one more question, unless your star has a question. I'm only doing that because we are pressed for time, that's all. Notice how she immediately allowed her star to ask the question. See how she's using good strategy. I want y'all to understand that. So I tell folk a lot of times, like in real practice, I had a case, I said, look, make your writing short so I can read it, because these folks send stuff this thick and want me to read it. I gotta read all that. Now I'm gonna read it, but I'm gonna scan over it, I'm not gonna retain it. But if you have something like this, I can read and remember that. But even though I tell folks make it short, they still send me all this stuff, and I don't read it.
Okay.
But see how quick they pick up on what I said. That is a gift that takes you far. See, law schools don't teach you how to deal with people. See, the Socratic method is bad. It really is. And I've always argued against that. But I was glad at my school we had a whole lot of clinics. And that was the best thing that showed me how to be a lawyer. I was able to deal with people my whole 30 years. I dealt with people. And I learned law. I'm sorry. Hey.
Take our time, Judge.
Well, I'm just here to help some. Y'all got to get this question together though now. I'm being.
Judge, in the interest of time, we have to stop at 7 o'clock.
I know we do.
Yeah, and we have not put on our case.
I know, and I'm giving y'all, you don't have a law. It's gone from 20 to 15 now. Is there a question?
Yes.
All right.
Just to clarify, so even though black people died, there wasn't actually any change. Was there any change?
There was no substantive change. The change was temporary, the change has been rolled back, and I personally feel that the quality of life for many people of African ancestry in America is just as bad, if not worse, than it was prior to the advent of the Civil Rights Movement.
Why do you think it's worse?
Because more of our people are dying, more of our people are in poverty, more of our people are being miseducated now than in any point in time in history.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And black people are miseducated, only people, not white people. Isn't that a fact?
No question. I withdraw the question, Your Honor.
Thank you. You come down, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Is there any defense? And I apologize. I got y'all down to 15 minutes. Please forgive
Yes,
me.
Your Honor, we'll comply.
Thank you.
I'd like to call our first witness, Officer Clarence Ruckus Thomas.
All right. Come on up, Mr. Ruckus. Please have a seat. Please state your name when you get situated.
My name is Clarence Ruckus Thomas, no relation.
Thank you. You go ahead, counsel.
Thank you, officer. When you say no relation, are you referring to the U.S. Supreme Court Justice?
Yes, the greatest justice the country's ever seen. No relation.
I see.
Now, hold on.
And
Get you out of here.
what is your actual title, officer? What's your actual title?
I am the deputy here in Selma, deputy officer.
And how long have you been a deputy in Selma?
25 years.
And in that time, have you ever been brought up on charges to accuse you of brutalizing a citizen?
There were a couple of occasions.
And during that time when you were accused, did you believe that those accusations were justified?
No, they were not.
And why do you say they weren't?
Because it was these liberals coming in and trying to stir up trouble. I've never harmed anyone here. I protect and serve. Black, white people, everybody.
When you say liberals have come in to stir up trouble, and are these people who are breaking the law when they come in?
Yeah, they come and break things up, shake things up, and mess up our good downtown area.
You sure you wanted this witness to testify?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right.
Yes, Your Honor.
Proceed.
Yes. And so law and order, what does that mean to you, officer?
Law and order is following the great law that this country has established. That our legislators and governor and city council, all that established, we follow, we abide by it.
Do you believe that criminals are basically blaming you for doing your job?
Yes.
Thank you so much, officer. No further questions. I pass the witness.
Ms. Cross? Sometimes you need to ask a question.
Mr. Thomas, you stated that Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas was the greatest justice, correct?
Yes, black man.
Right. And you also stated that you have been brought up on charges for brutalizing citizens, correct?
Yeah, unjust.
Were you ever held accountable for those?
Nope.
No further questions, Your Honor.
You can redirect. Then you come down, sir. You can call your
No, Your Honor, no redirect.
You call your next. Thank you, sir. You call your next witness. Is there another witness?
One more, Your Honor. We think we made a good case. We don't need to call a lot of witnesses. Come on, Mr. Teddy. Where is he? There he is.
That looks like Ted Quan.
He's a white man with a tan, Your Honor.
Okay. Can you please state your name?
This is Ted Quan.
Okay, that's all. Go ahead.
Mr. Clark, time is of the essence. Would you just tell the jury your position?
My position is retired.
Are you a retired politician?
Oh, yes, that's right. Yes, I'm a retired city councilman.
And isn't it true, Mr. Clark, that while you were a city councilman, that there were a lot of crime and violence in your community?
Yes, there's a lot of crime and violence in the community.
And isn't it a fact that as a city councilman, you did everything you could to try to stop that crime?
Well, you see, what people don't understand, you see, we need to hold people accountable. Mm-hmm. And these children, they ain't children really. I mean, they don't know why. Mm-hmm. They got guns. Mm-hmm. They shoot up people. Mm-hmm. And we don't hold them accountable. We be like, oh, well, they just children. Well, they just children shooting up people.
When you say they, you talk about the parents of the children, don't you?
I'm talking about the parents of the children. What I'm saying is, children, people need to be held responsible for the behaviors and the harm that they cause. When we hear about, well, slavery this and slavery that, and back in the day this and back in the day that, they ain't got nothing to do with some kid jacking cars, pulling people out, shooting guns up into people's houses. That they need to be held accountable, put in jail, and when they start happening, then they'll stop doing it.
Amen, brother.
Mr. Clark, isn't it a fact that you know of no law in the state of Alabama that is responsible for those children acting foolish, killing each other and stealing? Isn't the fact that it's a lack of home training?
Nobody in the state of Alabama, legislature, judges, or so forth, put a gun on a kid and told him, carjack that car. Ain't nobody, no legislator that I know. Now, if there is a legislator that told the young people to go jack a car, that man guilty of a crime. And when you're guilty of a crime, you should be arrested and be held accountable. So, no, the behaviors of young people that violate the rights of other people, they need to be held accountable for it. And I don't want to hear about no slavery. I don't want to hear about back in the day. I don't want to hear about psychology this and psychology that.
I got you, listen, you made a point. Okay, I got it. Time is of the essence. I just want to ask you one more question. You were a mulatto elected official, right?
See, yes.
You consider yourself black?
Yes.
And you work with other black elected officials?
Yes.
And you live in Selma, Dallas County, Alabama?
Yes.
Where black elected officials gave an acre of land to honor the Klan? Isn't that a fact? Black people did that. White people didn't do that, right?
I missed the question.
You live in Selma, Alabama, where black elected officials gave the Klan land to honor the Klan.
that. That was black people did that.
Yeah, you know, stupid is stupid, whether you black or white.
And you live in a town where there are black men been in jail 8, 9, 10 years without a trial. In a county that's 70% black with black judges, black is white folk didn't do that. It's none of that.
Wrong is wrong, and when we got black folks doing wrong, they need to be held accountable. Point blank, period, end of subject.
And they are not on trial tonight, are they? It's just white folk, and that's wrong, isn't it, Mr. Quan?
Yes.
That's not wrong. We have one question.
Oh, of course. I was wondering when you're going to let your star ask a question. Please use that microphone so we can hear you.
So do you believe that black people are the ones who miseducate each other?
That's a hell of a question.
She kind of stopped me with that one. Do black people miseducate themselves?
Because you said that kids need to hold themselves accountable, but do you believe that the black community, do you believe the black community is the one miseducating each other instead of telling each other right and wrong, or do you think that it's the white people who aren't holding them accountable? Who do you think is holding them accountable?
I think that in the moment that decisions are made about a behavior, be it a black person, a white person, a child, that in that moment there's a choice between right and wrong. And when the person chooses wrong, be they black, white, or whatever other color, they need to be held accountable. When they do right, we will have a better community.
That still doesn't answer the question, though.
What was the question?
The question was, what's that question again? The black She asked you whether or not black folks are the ones miseducating each other.
Yes. Black folks be miseducating each other all the time. They be telling the way to get ahead is to get over. And we need our stuff now. We don't need it tomorrow. And they don't want to get ready to do the work they need to do toward tomorrow. So they never get it because tomorrow never comes because they never did what they needed to do today. So that's what the problem is.
Well, what is the root cause of that miseducation?
Greed. Greed is the root cause, because as an individual, if I can get something now, rather than sacrifice now for something later, I will take the now and get over it. And that's the problem that people have. They do the now instead of the tomorrow, and black people be doing now all the time for themselves and not for other people. And then they blame white people for it. That's the problem.
We rest our case, Sean.
All right, thank you. Henry Cross.
Yeah, we just have a couple questions for you.
Yes, sir.
You talked about young black kids in the community who carjack, correct?
I did.
Do you know why they carjack?
Because they want the car.
Do you think there's any other reason why they would carjack?
Because it's fun.
Do you think that these kids who are doing these carjacking...
This is cross-examination. Now, you can't ask him a leading question. This is cross-examination. You can't ask him a leading question.
Right.
I know what you want to ask him. Ask him.
Right. Do these kids who jack these cars usually have a lot of money?
No.
Isn't it true that the vestiges of segregation separating people from education is a cause of what you just testified to? Yes or no question?
Yes.
All right, go ahead. And I did that for you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Judge. Do you think that kids who don't have a lot of money usually are desperate?
Some kids who don't have a lot of money are desperate.
And do you think desperation could lead to some ill-begotten behaviors?
I believe that when a person is desperate, they do desperate things, whether they're kids, grown, or not.
I'm not that pretty lady, but you know.
So like carjacking.
Carjacking.
That's a desperate act.
That's fun. That's fun. My friends do, they jack 10 cars, I'm gonna jack 11. Cause I'm gonna be the best jacker that there is.
Any other questions?
There's no other question.
Thank you. Any other redirect? Anything?
No, y'all did no redirect.
Anything else in the defense? All right, y'all got 2 minutes to sum, and y'all got 2 minutes to sum. Then y'all got 1 more minute to rebuttal. That's it.
Thank you.
Now, you excuse me staying, but go ahead and you can take your microphone with you. And now you got 1 minute. See, time is of the essence.
I want to address the jury.
Yes, ma'am. I'm still giving you 2 minutes. They're gonna have 1 minute.
Much appreciated, Your Honor.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
May I please the court?
Of course.
Life, liberty, and property. The pillars of freedom on which America's greatness and wealth are built. But is that reality? The greatness and wealth of this nation was built on the black backs of millions of slaves. African people who were strong, valiant, and persevered through everything from being kidnapped and murdered to standing on the front lines and sitting in jail cells for equality. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you have listened to some of the history and attempted destruction of a people. You have heard from Dr. Wimbush, who spoke to you about the history and evolution of oppression. Tony Browder, who provided you with the background of the civil rights movement and described how racism persists and transitioned after the election of President Obama. Senator Sanders came up here and provided great insight into the movements and actions of the Alabama legislature, who shared a journalistic perspective and accounts of crime and injustice that perpetuate poverty right here in Selma. Now, people, is the time for action. Constitutional rights are being violated. The shields and safeties provided by the 14th Amendment of the equal protection under the laws are being stripped away. Alabama intends to remove the power and voices of Africans by snatching away their right to vote. Back will be the days of poll taxes and tests, asking ridiculous questions like, how many bubbles are there in a bar of soap? Back in the days of black codes and Jim Crow legislation to dehumanize people who built this country. It's not hard to imagine because it's not far from where we currently stand. Look at the policing in this country. African Americans are murdered instead of protected. Now you may say to yourself, this case is only about voter suppression. Why are they asking for $20 billion? This case is not simply about voting. This case is a seminal step in the battle for the soul of America. The heart of a nation that beats with the blood of every African that was raped, lynched, whipped for being superior. Now, the defense counsel talks about black-on-black violence and how this is not something that was precipitated by the state. However, these are the very effects of a people who do not know their history, a people who have been oppressed and forced to believe that they were inferior. This isn't a show. This isn't about happy feelings. The time has come for a reckoning. Alabama has a long and violent history with African Americans. The damage is insidious. Stop denying the injury caused. Pay what you owe. America and Alabama must live up to those pillars of freedom. Thank you.
Don't know how much following up I can do on that. Well, 2 Martin Luther King, I Have a Dream speeches in one night, my goodness. Now you know what we're here for. This is a court of law. This is not a show, like my learned colleague said. But to show means that there's been evidence, and yet there's been none. No evidence to show that any of the trials and tribulations that black folks have gone through are caused by the state of Alabama. You heard testimony from a legislator in the state of Alabama, who talked about cohesive working together, who talked about how the laws could be good, how the laws could change Alabama. And yet, we have the preposterous notion that everything that befalls you as a black person has to be assigned to the state of Alabama and not to your own shortcomings. See, this is the reason why we can't get ahead. This is why colleagues of mine across the river in Mississippi, one colleague said it. He said segregation is dead, let it stay dead. Y'all can't let it die. Now you say you want to let it die. You say you want somebody to pay. I do too. And the people that I want to pay are the ones who do the crime. I want them to do the time. And I want you to stop assigning race to it when it's just you trying once again to make it all about the problems of the past. For cry me a river, sing me a sea. I think we're done.
In rebuttal, you got 1 minute.
The state says there was no evidence. You are the evidence. Thank you.
The plaintiff.
No justice for the
You've been practicing the law all these years. You know you don't get a rebuttal. You've been finished. You get one time. And now you're not going to work. We're out of time. But thank y'all so much. Now, even y'all in the audience will be the jury. I want you to deliberate on this for the rest of the year. And you can't get a decision. Now, you will be deliberate collectively, but we don't have a time right now. So I want y'all to deliberate this for over the course of the year, and then we may get a report next year. Yes, ma'am.
Can we just take 3 minutes for people?
No, we don't have 3 minutes.
Yes, we do, Judge.
No, Mark gave me 2 minutes.
But he ain't in charge.
It's 3 minutes to what?
I need 3 minutes. I need the people to deliberate just among themselves.
I have 7:02. I'm on time right now. So
and just decide yourself.
That's outside. 3 minutes.
Yes,
all right.
Y'all just talk among yourselves real quick.
That's fine. Let's do that. Thank y'all. See, I run stuff on time. We got 2 more minutes. Y'all talk about it, and you all pick a person to be your spokesperson or your foreperson, and y'all let us know. Now, as far as the instructions for you while y'all delivering, in Alabama, if you don't ask for an amount of money during your first argument, you can't get none. I didn't hear an amount. They said that on the opening. They ain't said nothing about this closing argument. What I'm saying, do they still have that book? I forgot what it's called, but there's a book that has a synopsis of all the laws of each state. So if you go to a particular state, you can look at that book and figure out the procedures and laws that that state has. They still have that book.
Not that I'm aware of, but if you want to recommend it, I'm sure we can find it on Amazon.
Well, I don't like that. See, I'm used to physical books. I don't like
Our first woman judge just walked into the courtroom, 21st Century Judge Perkins.
Okay, Is there a spokesperson to the left side, to the right, then I'm pointing over here, a spokesperson on this side?
Just get a volunteer.
Is there a spokesperson over here? And look, while they're doing that, all you council, if you always take your chair and pull it around the other side. While they're getting their spokesperson together, each of you as council, please pull your chair around the other side. Can you grab that microphone and let us know what's on the side?
Foot Soldiers Breakfast is 7 o'clock in the morning. Foot Soldiers Breakfast, 7 o'clock in the morning. The parade is at 9:30. The festival is absolutely free all day.
Grab that mic there. If you don't mind, grab that mic over that table.
Y'all, let's give these young people a big round of applause. Y'all, they were excellent. The young people, please.
Thank you, Jack.
Grab that mic off that table.
Okay, Dr. Barber is on the way. Y'all, please don't leave. He's very powerful. Don't leave. Dr. Barber is on the way.
Go ahead. Let me have your attention. Thank you.
Give me a picture.
We have
20 trillion. All right, thank you. Is there a spokesperson in the middle? You're the one from the middle. And so, we're moving now. I asked y'all to pull them chairs around the other side.
Yeah, so will I be there?
Wait, hold on. Go ahead.
Oh, I wasn't hurt there. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Y'all want to actually remitter tour.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes, sir. We want to ask for a remitter all the way down to 0, please.
Well, that's not zero, but we got to award something. So, we're not going to turn over the whole stretch.